The message that changed Daniel Mercer's marriage did not arrive late at night. It arrived on a Tuesday at 3:18 in the afternoon, while he was explaining to a classroom of 17-year-olds why people rarely notice the exact moment their lives begin to fall apart. Daniel taught literature at Westfield High School, the kind of suburban public school where the lockers were dented from 3 generations of students, and the same motivational posters had been peeling off the walls since before he started working there 14 years earlier. He was 39 years old, not rich, not impressive, but respected in the quiet way teachers sometimes are when they stay long enough for former students to come back and say thank you. That afternoon, he was halfway through a discussion about tragic irony when his phone, face down on his desk, vibrated once. He normally ignored it. Teachers learn to ignore interruptions the way surgeons ignore background noise. If you reacted to every distraction, you would never finish anything important. But it vibrated again, then again. 3 short bursts. Emergency pattern. He excused himself, stepped into the hallway and checked the screen. It was a notification from a cloud photo account he barely remembered setting up years earlier when his daughter needed extra storage space for school projects. New device logged into shared album. He almost dismissed it. Probably Emma uploading something from home, he thought. Their 16-year-old daughter photographed everything. Sunsets, their cat, half-finished art projects. Then another notification appeared. Video uploaded. Daniel tapped it without thinking. The video opened instantly. At first, he didn't understand what he was looking at. The camera was pointed downward. Someone walking, carpet, shoes, elevator doors opening. Emma's voice, soft, distracted. "Wait, I think it's recording." A man laughed. "Relax." The camera lifted, and Daniel saw his wife. Not in a hotel room. Not in a dramatic setting. Just standing too close to someone who was not her husband. Too familiar. Too practiced. Her hand resting on the man's chest the way people stand when they already know each other's breathing patterns. The kind of closeness that doesn't happen by accident. The kind you recognize instantly when you've been married 18 years. Daniel did not watch the rest. He closed the video, stood very still in the hallway. For a strange moment, he found himself noticing details that did not matter. The hum of the fluorescent lights, a trophy case with a missing plaque, the faint smell of dry erase markers. His heart was not racing. He was not shaking. Instead, there was a strange, clinical clarity. The same feeling he used to get grading final exams when the answers were obvious and the outcome unavoidable. When he returned to the classroom, he finished the lesson, explained the concept of delayed consequences, assigned homework, answered 2 questions, reminded them about Friday's test. The bell rang. Students left. One of them said, "See you tomorrow, Mr. Mercer." Daniel nodded automatically. He stayed in the empty classroom for another 5 minutes. Then he sat down, opened the video again, watched it fully this time. Emma had accidentally recorded it while pulling her phone out of her bag at a regional debate tournament 2 cities away. She had not even realized what she captured. There was no kissing, nothing explicit, just familiarity, private jokes, a hand that stayed too long, the man saying, "Same place next Thursday?" and his wife answering, "Yes, but earlier this time." That was enough. People who had been married long enough learned the difference between suspicion and confirmation. Suspicion asks questions. Confirmation removes the need. Daniel did not call her, did not text, did not confront. Instead, he did what he had trained himself to do through years of dealing with teenagers and emotional crisis. He observed. He went home at his normal time, fed the cat, graded papers, started dinner. At 6:42, his wife Rebecca walked through the door talking about traffic and deadlines, and how exhausting her day had been at the regional education office where she worked as a curriculum coordinator. She kissed his cheek automatically. He noticed something he had never paid attention to before. She did not actually look at him when she did it. "How was your day?" she asked. "Normal," he said, which was true in a way that would have been impossible to explain. They ate dinner, talked about Emma's tournament. Their son Caleb, 22, called briefly from Chicago where he was finishing an engineering internship. Rebecca sounded exactly like she always sounded on those calls. Warm, proud, effortlessly maternal. Daniel watched her while she spoke. Not with anger, with curiosity. Like someone rereading a novel after learning the ending. That night, she fell asleep quickly. Daniel did not. Around midnight, he got up quietly and walked into his small home office. He did not search her phone, did not check emails, did not start an investigation. Instead, he opened a blank notebook, not a legal pad, not a financial document, a teacher's notebook. And he wrote one sentence: "What actually matters now?" He sat with that question a long time. He did not want revenge. He did not want drama. He did not want to win. He wanted something much harder. He wanted to make sure the next decisions he made would not make his children's lives smaller. That was the only rule he wrote under it. Do nothing that makes Emma or Caleb pay for this. Everything else could be figured out later. The next morning, he did something unexpected. Instead of going to a lawyer, he asked the school principal if he could take 3 personal days. The principal looked concerned. "Everything okay?" Daniel answered honestly. "No, but it will be." That answer seemed to satisfy him. For 3 days, Daniel did not confront Rebecca. He watched. Listened. Not like a detective. Like a teacher watching a student slowly reveal the truth they were not ready to say. Patterns appeared quickly once he knew where to look. Thursday meetings that ran late. Phone turned face down. New interest in appearance that she explained as professional expectations. He did not challenge any of it. By the 3rd evening, something inside him settled. Not peace, not acceptance, just direction. That night after dinner, he said something simple. "I saw a video Emma uploaded." Rebecca froze. Not dramatically, just a fraction too long between movements. "What video?" He met her eyes. "The one from the debate tournament." Silence. A full 10 seconds. Then, "That's not what you think." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know exactly what I think." She tried explanations, context, stress, loneliness. He did not interrupt. When she finished, he asked only one question. "How long have you been unhappy?" Not, "How long have you been cheating?" Not, "Who is he?" Not, "Why?" Just that. Because after 18 years, he understood something most people learned too late. Affairs rarely begin with opportunity. They begin with silence. Rebecca cried then. Real crying. Not defensive crying. Not persuasive crying. The kind people do when they realize the story they told themselves no longer works. "About a year," she admitted. Daniel nodded. That matched what he had suspected. Not because of evidence, because emotional distance has a timeline. "What do you want now?" he asked. She did not answer immediately. That was answer enough. Daniel stood up. Not dramatically, not angrily. Just tired. "I think," he said carefully, "we need to stop pretending this is something we can rewind." She whispered, "Are you leaving?" He considered the question. "No," he said. "I think we're going to change what this family looks like instead." That sentence would reshape everything that followed. Not through courts, not through destruction, but through something much more difficult. Honesty, and that was only the beginning. Daniel did not ask Rebecca to leave the house. That surprised her more than anything else. Most of the arguments she had rehearsed in her head over the past year involved shouting, accusations, doors closing hard enough to feel final. She was prepared to defend herself against rage. She had no preparation for calm. The next morning, he woke at the same time as always, 6:10, turned off his alarm before it rang, and went downstairs to make coffee. The routine felt almost artificial now, like watching himself play a role he had memorized years earlier. Rebecca came down 20 minutes later, moving carefully, like someone entering a room where something fragile had broken, and she wasn't sure where the sharp edges were. "Did you sleep?" she asked quietly. "Enough," he said. He poured her coffee the same way he always had. 2 sugars, no milk. She noticed. That nearly made her cry again. "What happens now?" she asked. Daniel leaned against the kitchen counter for a moment before answering. "I think we need to stop lying to ourselves about what this is." "That sounds like divorce." "That sounds like honesty," he replied. She wrapped her hands around the mug but didn't drink. "I don't want to destroy everything." Daniel nodded slowly. "Neither do I." A long pause followed. Then he said something she did not expect. "I think we need rules." She looked confused. "Rules?" "Yes." "For what?" "For how we end this without turning it into something our children have to recover from." That landed differently. Rebecca had expected a battle. Daniel was talking about damage control. What kind of rules? She asked. Daniel had clearly thought about it already. First, he said, no pretending for the kids, no fake normal. She swallowed. Second, no character assassination. We don't turn each other into villains just to feel better. That made her look at him sharply. Even now? Especially now. A third pause. Third, he continued, we tell them together, not separately. Not strategically, together. Rebecca nodded slowly. That felt fair. And the fourth? She asked. Daniel hesitated slightly before answering. We don't rush decisions just to escape discomfort. She looked down. I don't deserve that kind of fairness. Daniel gave a small, tired smile. This isn't about what you deserve. It's about what kind of people we still want to be after this. That sentence stayed in the air. Because it wasn't about saving the marriage anymore. It was about not losing themselves. They told Emma that Sunday, not dramatically, not as a confrontation. They asked her to sit with them in the living room. Emma knew immediately. Children who grow up in stable homes notice instability faster than anyone. Are you getting divorced? She asked before either of them spoke. Rebecca started crying again. Daniel answered, yes. Emma nodded once. No hysteria, no shock, just quiet processing. How long? Daniel did not lie. We've been struggling for about a year. Emma looked at her mother. Is there someone else? Rebecca opened her mouth, closed it, then nodded. Emma absorbed that. Not dramatically, but visibly. You should have told him, she said softly. Rebecca started crying harder. Emma didn't comfort her, not out of cruelty, out of disappointment. Then she said something neither of them expected. I don't want to pick sides, Daniel immediately answered. You won't have to. Rebecca nodded quickly. Never. Emma looked between them carefully. You're not fighting. No, Daniel said. That's good, she replied. But she didn't sound relieved. She sounded older. Telling Caleb was different. They didn't call him. Daniel insisted they wait until his scheduled visit 2 weeks later. Big news shouldn't be delivered through phone reception delays, he said. Rebecca agreed. When Caleb arrived, he knew something was wrong within 5 minutes. Not because of tension, because of politeness. His parents were being too careful with each other. That's new, he said. Daniel didn't delay. We're separating. Caleb leaned back slowly. He didn't speak for nearly 30 seconds. Finally. Was it bad? Daniel answered carefully. It was complicated. Caleb looked at Rebecca. Was there someone else? Rebecca nodded. He exhaled, long, not angry, just recalibrating. Then he asked something unexpected. Are we okay financially? Daniel almost smiled. Engineer brain, practical first. Yes, Caleb nodded. Okay. Another long silence, then. I don't want holidays to become negotiations. Daniel said, they won't. Rebecca added, we'll figure something out that works. Caleb studied them. You're both being weirdly decent about this, Daniel answered honestly. Because the alternative is easier and worse. Caleb nodded slowly. That makes sense. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, came back with 3 glasses, poured water, raised his glass slightly. To not making this worse than it has to be. It wasn't a toast, but it was the closest thing to unity they had. The first real consequence came from somewhere unexpected. Not lawyers, not friends. Work. 2 weeks later, Daniel was called into the principal's office. Not for discipline, for concern. We've noticed you're quieter, the principal said. Daniel almost laughed. I teach literature. Quiet is my job. The principal didn't smile. If you need reduced workload temporarily, Daniel shook his head. I need routine. That answer seemed to make sense. But something else happened that day. A former student stopped him in the hallway. Mr. Mercer? Yes? I just wanted to say, you helped me a lot last year. Daniel nodded politely. The student hesitated. My parents divorced when I was 14. Daniel waited. They tried to destroy each other. It destroyed everything else too. Daniel said nothing. I hope, if you ever go through something like that, you don't do that. Daniel felt that sentence land deeper than anything anyone had said yet. I won't, he answered, and meant it. Rebecca's consequences looked different. They were quieter, social, subtle. People sense changes in marriages before they are announced. One friend stopped calling. Another suddenly became overly supportive. Someone from work asked too many careful questions. The man from the video texted her twice. She did not respond. Daniel noticed that, did not comment. 3 weeks after their conversation, she ended it. Not because Daniel demanded it, because she finally saw it clearly. Affairs exist in stolen time. Reality does not, she told Daniel one evening. I ended it, Daniel nodded. I assumed you would eventually. She looked surprised. You're not angry? I was, he said. Now I'm just done measuring it. That was harder to hear than anger. The house began changing in small ways. 2 calendars instead of 1. Different grocery habits, separate laundry days. Emma noticed everything, but she also noticed something else. Her parents were not trying to win. That mattered more than she could explain yet. One night, about a month later, Daniel found Rebecca sitting on the back porch long after midnight. Can't sleep? He asked. She shook her head. I keep thinking about when we were 25. Daniel smiled faintly. We were very optimistic. We were very naive, she corrected. He sat across from her. Do you hate me? She asked suddenly. Daniel considered that carefully. No. Why not? He thought for a long moment. Because hate would mean I still expected something different. She cried quietly at that. I'm sorry, she whispered. Daniel nodded once. I know. That was the first moment she understood something fully. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. And sometimes forgiveness arrives alone. By the end of that first month, one thing had become clear to Daniel. This was not going to be a story about revenge. It was going to be a story about restraint. And restraint is much harder. Especially when nobody applauds it. The hardest part of the end of a marriage is not the discovery. It is not the conversation. It is not even the decision. It is the strange middle period afterward, when nothing is officially over yet, but nothing is the same either. No one prepares you for that part. About 6 weeks after everything came into the open, Daniel noticed something unexpected. He wasn't angry anymore. That should have felt like progress. Instead, it felt like standing in a room after a storm had passed and realizing the silence wasn't peace. It was absence. One Thursday afternoon, he stayed late after school grading essays about personal identity. The assignment asked students to answer a simple question. Who are you when nobody expects anything from you? He had assigned it casually. Now the question felt uncomfortably personal. He read one essay 3 times. A quiet student wrote, sometimes people don't change suddenly. Sometimes they just stop pretending slowly. Daniel closed the paper and sat very still. That sentence stayed with him all the way home. At home, things had become polite. Dangerously polite. Rebecca asked about his day. He asked about hers. They discussed Emma's college plans, shared grocery lists, arranged schedules. 2 responsible adults managing logistics. It looked functional. It felt hollow. One evening, Emma said something that cut through it. You guys talk like coworkers. Neither parent answered immediately, because she was right. The real turning point came from somewhere Daniel did not expect. Not from Rebecca, not from the children, from himself. On a Saturday morning, he found an old storage box while cleaning the garage. Inside were notebooks from his first years of teaching, lesson plans, ideas, notes he had written to himself when he still believed he might write a book someday. He sat on the garage floor reading his own handwriting from 15 years earlier. There was energy there, curiosity, ambition that had nothing to do with providing stability. He realized something uncomfortable. He had not only lost a marriage, he had slowly abandoned parts of himself long before that. That realization did not excuse anything Rebecca had done, but it changed one important question. Instead of, how did this happen to me? The question became, when did I stop growing? That question was harder, because it did not have a villain. A week later, Daniel did something nobody expected. He signed up for a weekend writing workshop at a small community arts center. Rebecca noticed the email confirmation on the shared computer. You're taking a writing class? She asked. Yes. I didn't know you still wrote. I didn't, he answered. That answer carried more meaning than the sentence itself. She watched him differently after that. Not as a husband, as someone she realized she had stopped fully seeing years earlier. That recognition hurt her in ways guilt hadn't yet. The workshop was held in a renovated brick building that used to be a textile warehouse. 12 people sat in a circle of mismatched chairs. A nurse, a retired accountant, a college freshman, a mechanic. Normal people, all trying to say something they had postponed saying. The instructor, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and direct eyes, gave them the first assignment. Write about the moment your life changed direction, she said. Not the dramatic moment. The quiet one you only understood later. Daniel stared at the blank page for a long time. Then he wrote something surprising. Not about the video, not about the confrontation, not about the affair. He wrote about a Tuesday afternoon years earlier when he had turned down a fellowship opportunity because the timing wasn't convenient for the family. At the time, it had seemed responsible. Now it looked like a turning point he never examined. When they shared their pieces aloud, Daniel expected to feel exposed. Instead, he felt something else. Relief. Not because his story was unique, because it wasn't. Everyone in that room had a version of the same realization. Lives rarely collapse from one event. They drift off course through 1,000 small compromises. When he came home that evening, Rebecca asked how it went. He told her honestly. Strange. Good strange or bad strange? Necessary strange. She nodded. I remember when you used to talk about writing. He smiled faintly. I remember when I used to do it. That conversation lingered between them longer than any argument had, because it wasn't about blame. It was about lost versions of themselves. Meanwhile, Emma was changing too. Teenagers often become more perceptive during family crises, not less. One night, she asked Daniel something unexpected. Are you happier now? He considered that carefully. I think I'm more awake. That sounds complicated. It is, she nodded. I think Mom is scared. Daniel did not deny it. I think she is too. Emma hesitated. I think she thought you would fight. Daniel understood immediately. She doesn't know what to do with quiet. Emma nodded. That makes two of us. Rebecca's own turning point came quietly. Not through Daniel, through embarrassment. At a professional conference 2 months after everything came out, she saw the man she had been involved with across a lobby. For the first time, she saw him clearly. Not through excitement, not through secrecy, just reality. He looked smaller, not physically, contextually. She realized something uncomfortable. The relationship had never been about him. It had been about escape. And escapes rarely look impressive in daylight. He tried to approach her. She was polite, brief, final. When she returned home, she sat at the kitchen table long after midnight. Daniel came downstairs for water and found her there. I think I understand something now, she said. He waited. I wasn't choosing him, she continued quietly. I was choosing not to look at myself. Daniel did not respond immediately, because that was the first completely honest sentence she had spoken about it. That realization hurts more than anything else, she admitted. He nodded. It usually does. 3 months after their initial conversation, they began discussing practical separation. Not through lawyers first, through conversations. Who moves? When? How Emma finishes school without disruption. How holidays would work. Not negotiations. Planning. That difference mattered. One evening, Rebecca asked, Do you think we failed? Daniel thought for a long time before answering. I think we stopped paying attention. She absorbed that slowly. That sounds worse. It probably is. The biggest shift came unexpectedly from Caleb. He called one evening and said something neither parent anticipated. I think you guys are doing this right. Daniel asked what he meant. My roommate's parents are divorcing, Caleb said. They're using him as a messenger. It's brutal. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. We agreed we wouldn't do that. I know, Caleb replied. That's why I'm saying it matters. That conversation stayed with Daniel long after the call ended. Sometimes success and failure looks like minimizing collateral damage. Late one night, Daniel wrote something in his notebook that marked the real turning point of the story. Not a dramatic realization, just a quiet sentence. I don't need this to end with someone losing. That idea went against every revenge narrative he had ever heard. but it felt true. And truth, he was slowly learning, is rarely cinematic. By the time autumn arrived, the house had become something new. Not broken, not whole, transitional. Rebecca had started looking at apartments. Daniel had started writing regularly. Emma had started talking about college with cautious optimism. Nobody said it aloud, but everyone understood something important. This family was not ending. It was changing shape. And that required a different kind of courage than staying had. No one tells you that separation does not begin when someone moves out. It begins the first time you realize you are no longer planning the same future. For Daniel and Rebecca, that moment came on an ordinary Wednesday evening in October. They were sitting at the kitchen table with calendars open. Not arguing, not negotiating, just comparing logistics. Rebecca had found a small apartment 12 minutes away, close enough that Emma could move between homes without feeling displaced. Far enough that the house would no longer feel like shared territory. "I can move after Emma's midterms," Rebecca said. Daniel nodded. "That makes sense. I don't want her packing boxes while studying." Agreed. They kept talking like that for nearly an hour. Utilities, furniture, car insurance, mail forwarding. The practical dismantling of a shared life looks surprisingly administrative. At one point, Rebecca stopped mid-sentence. "This feels wrong." Daniel looked up. "What does?" "How normal this sounds." He understood. Crisis rarely looks dramatic from the inside. She gave a small, sad laugh. "That sounds like something you'd say to your students." "I probably have." They sat quietly for a moment. Then Rebecca asked something she had been avoiding. "Are you going to change the house?" Daniel thought about that. "No." "Why not?" "Because Emma still lives here." That answer hit her harder than she expected, because it reminded her of something she had once admired about him. His instinct was always stability first. Even now. Especially now. The actual packing began 2 weeks later. Not with a big moment, with a single cardboard box. Rebecca started with books, not clothes, not photographs. Books felt safer. Daniel watched from the doorway of the study, not intruding, not helping, just witnessing the physical evidence of transition. At one point, she picked up a novel he had given her early in their marriage. She ran her fingers across the inside cover where he had written, "For all the conversations we haven't had yet." She closed the book quickly. "Do you want to keep this?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "No, you should." "Why?" "Because you finished it. I never did." That sentence carried more meaning than either of them unpacked. Emma handled the transition in her own way. Not through tears, through organization. She created a shared calendar, color-coded. Mom days, dad days, study days. She treated it like a project. Daniel noticed something important. She was not trying to fix anything. She was trying to make it predictable. Teenagers can tolerate pain better than uncertainty. The first difficult moment came unexpectedly. Not during packing, during dinner. 3 weeks before the move, Rebecca realized this would be one of the last times they would eat together in this configuration. Same table, same positions. Same routine they had followed for nearly 2 decades. Nobody mentioned it, but everyone felt it. Emma talked about a scholarship essay. Daniel asked about a book she was reading. Rebecca asked about a science project. Ordinary conversation. Halfway through the meal, Rebecca suddenly stopped speaking. "Sorry," she said quietly. "I just realized I don't know how many more of these there are," Daniel answered gently. "We don't have to count them." That made it harder, because he wasn't trying to distance himself emotionally. He was trying to preserve dignity. Moving day did not look like what Rebecca had imagined. There was no fight, no dramatic goodbye, just a rented van, 3 trips, a quiet efficiency that felt almost respectful. Daniel helped carry 2 heavier pieces of furniture, not because he had to, because he chose to. At one point, she said, "You don't have to help." He answered simply, "I know." That was the entire conversation. The hardest moment came at the end. Not inside the house. Outside. When the last box was loaded and there was nothing left to organize, they stood in the driveway, not touching, not performing sadness. Just 2 people who had once built a life together standing in the space where it used to exist. Rebecca finally said, "I never thought it would end like this." Daniel considered that carefully. Most things don't end the way we imagine. She nodded. I thought if we ever broke, it would be because we hated each other. Daniel answered honestly. That might have been easier. She looked surprised. Why? Because hate gives you energy. This just requires acceptance. She looked at him for a long moment. I did love you. I know, he said. That was not comfort. It was recognition. After she drove away, Daniel went back inside. The house felt larger, not emptier, just different, like a place that had lost background noise. He walked through each room slowly, not nostalgically, orienting himself. Emma came downstairs an hour later. Well, she said softly. Well, he replied. Are we okay? She asked. Daniel answered carefully. We're adjusting, she nodded. That sounds like a teacher answer. It is, she hesitated. Are you lonely? He considered that. Not yet. That was the most honest answer available. Rebecca's first night alone in the apartment was harder, not because she missed Daniel, because she had no routines there, no shared history built into the walls, just furniture and silence. She unpacked slowly, made tea, sat on the edge of the bed. At 11:40, she almost texted Daniel about a small problem with the Wi-Fi. Habit. She stopped herself. That moment hit harder than the move itself, because it was the first time she fully understood what separation actually meant. Not distance, loss of automatic connection. Over the next month, something subtle changed. Daniel became more present in his own life. He started running in the mornings, not dramatically, just 20 minutes. He wrote more. Submitted a short personal essay to a small literary magazine. He did not tell anyone. He just did it. Meanwhile, Rebecca began therapy. Not because Daniel suggested it, because she realized she did not want to repeat the same emotional patterns in the future. That required looking inward, which was harder than blaming outward. The real emotional breaking point came in November. Emma's school held a college information night. Both parents attended, sat separately, not avoiding each other, just respecting the new reality. At one point, Emma was speaking with an admissions advisor and turned to include both of them in the conversation. For a brief moment, they stood side by side again, like before. Then the moment passed. Rebecca whispered quietly, "This is strange." Daniel nodded. "Yes." "Will it always feel like this?" Daniel thought carefully. "No." "How do you know?" "Because nothing stays unfamiliar forever." She absorbed that. "You always were good at transitions," she said. Daniel smiled faintly. "I teach 17-year-olds. Transition is the entire job." For the first time, she saw something clearly. He was not just surviving this, he was evolving through it. That realization was both painful and strangely reassuring. A week later, Emma said something unexpected. "I think you guys did something rare." Daniel asked what she meant. "You didn't turn each other into enemies." He didn't answer immediately, because that had been a conscious choice, and a difficult one. Emma continued, "My friend's parents did. It messed everything up." Daniel nodded slowly. "Pain spreads easily when people stop containing it." She looked at him. "That sounds like something you should write down." He smiled. "I probably will." By December, the new shape of their lives was visible, not final, but stable enough to stand. Daniel had learned something unexpected. Separation is not about dividing possessions. It is about redefining identity. And that process takes longer than anyone admits. One night before winter break, Emma asked one last difficult question. "Do you regret marrying Mom?" Daniel answered immediately. "No." She looked surprised. "Even now?" "Yes." "Why?" He thought carefully. "Because you exist." That answer ended the conversation. Because some truths are bigger than endings. By the time the first snow came, one thing had become clear. This was no longer a story about betrayal. It had become a story about what people choose to become after trust is broken. And the hardest part was still ahead. Not separation, not adjustment, but learning how to live fully again. And truth, he was slowly learning, is rarely cinematic. By the time autumn arrived, the house had become something new. Not broken, not whole, transitional. Rebecca had started looking at apartments. Daniel had started writing regularly. Emma had started talking about college with cautious optimism. Nobody said it aloud, but everyone understood something important. This family was not ending, it was changing shape. And that required a different kind of courage than staying had. People think closure is something dramatic. A final conversation, an apology, a moment where everything suddenly makes sense. Daniel learned something different. Closure is usually much quieter than that. It looks like ordinary days slowly becoming yours again. Winter passed without any major events. No confrontations. No unexpected revelations. Just life continuing in smaller, steadier ways. Daniel kept teaching, kept writing, kept running in the mornings even when January cold made the sidewalks feel unforgiving and the air burn in his lungs. Routine became something new. Not repetition, recovery. The first real sign that something inside him had shifted came in February. One of his essays was accepted by the small literary magazine he had submitted to months earlier. They paid him $75. It was the smallest check he had received in years. It meant more than any bonus he had ever earned. He didn't celebrate publicly. He didn't even tell many people. But that evening he allowed himself something simple. He ordered takeout from a small Thai restaurant he used to like before life became too scheduled. Emma noticed the change immediately. "What are we celebrating?" she asked. Daniel handed her the printed email. She read it twice. "You got published?" "Apparently." "That's actually really cool." He smiled slightly. "I think 15 years ago I would have thought so too." She looked at him carefully. "I think you still do." That observation stayed with him. Rebecca heard about it a week later when Emma mentioned it casually during one of their dinners together. She texted Daniel that night. "I'm proud of you. You should have done that years ago." Daniel stared at the message for a long time, then replied, "I probably should have." There was nothing else to say. But it wasn't a painful exchange. It was two people finally seeing each other more clearly than they had while married. Sometimes distance makes honesty easier. Spring arrived slowly. Daniel noticed he was thinking less about what had happened and more about what was ahead. That was new. Pain fades unevenly. Not day by day, but moment by moment. You suddenly realize you went 3 hours without thinking about it. Then a whole day. Then you stop counting. Emma received her first college acceptance in March, a state university 2 hours away. Not her first choice, but real, possible. They celebrated with grocery store cupcakes because she insisted she didn't want anything dramatic. Daniel drove her to visit the campus a week later. During the drive, she asked something he hadn't expected. "Are you scared of being alone when I leave?" He answered honestly. "I think I'm learning not to be." That sounds like a complicated answer. It is. She looked out the window for a long time. "I think you're going to be okay." He smiled slightly. "I think so too." Rebecca's life was changing too. Not dramatically, gradually. Therapy was forcing her to confront parts of herself she had ignored for years. Patterns of avoidance, fear of aging, the way she measured her worth through external validation. None of it was comfortable, but it was real. One afternoon, she admitted something during a session that surprised even her. "I thought I wanted a different life," she said, "but I think I just didn't know how to stay present in the one I had." Understanding that did not fix anything, but it stopped her from rewriting the past into something simpler than it was. In April, something unexpected happened. Daniel was asked to speak at a small regional education conference. Not about divorce, not about personal crisis, about teaching writing authentically. He almost declined. Then he remembered something he had written months earlier. "Do not shrink your life because something ended." So he accepted. During the talk, he said something that surprised even himself. "Most people think growth happens when life improves," he told the room. "I think it happens when life interrupts your assumptions." The room went quiet, not because it was profound, because it was true. Afterward, a young teacher approached him. "How do you know when you're past the worst part?" she asked. Daniel thought carefully before answering. "When you stop trying to return to who you were." That answer stayed with him long after the conference ended. The final emotional shift came in a very ordinary moment. Late May, warm evening. Daniel was watering the small garden Emma had started years earlier. Tomatoes, basil, things that required consistency but not perfection. Rebecca stopped by to drop something off for Emma. They spoke for a few minutes, comfortably, without history pressing between every sentence. As she was leaving, she paused. "I think I understand something now," she said. Daniel waited. "You didn't become cold," she continued. "You became clear." He considered that. "That might be true." She nodded slowly. "I wish I had understood that earlier." He did not answer that, because some realizations arrive too late to change outcomes, but not too late to change people. Emma graduated in June. A hot afternoon, metal folding chairs, names called too quickly, parents cheering too loudly. Daniel and Rebecca sat separately, but when Emma crossed the stage, they both stood at the same time, without planning it. After the ceremony, Emma hugged both of them at once. "I think we did this okay," she said quietly. Daniel answered, "I think you did this well." That distinction mattered. Children often carry more emotional weight than parents realize. By late summer, the house felt different again. Not because someone had left, because Daniel had fully arrived in his own life again. He had new routines, new ambitions, not dramatic ones, just honest ones. He was writing regularly now, not for escape, for expression. One evening, he reread the very first notebook entry he had written months earlier. What actually matters now? Under it, he added a new sentence. Be someone you recognize again. The final piece of closure came without announcement. On an ordinary Sunday, Daniel ran into Rebecca at a bookstore. They talked briefly about Emma's move to college, about Caleb's new job offer, about normal things. As they were leaving, Rebecca said something simple. "I hope you're happy." Daniel thought about it. Not the easy answer, the true one. "I think I'm becoming someone who can be." She smiled softly. "That sounds right." They said goodbye without sadness. Not because the past didn't matter, because it no longer controlled the present. That night, Daniel sat on the back porch with a notebook, not writing about betrayal, not writing about loss, writing about what comes after people survive things they thought might break them. The neighborhood was quiet. Someone's dog barked in the distance. A screen door closed somewhere down the block. Ordinary sounds. He realized something important. His life had not been destroyed. It had been interrupted. And interruption is not the same as ending. The last thing he wrote that night was not dramatic, not poetic, just honest. "I did not lose everything. I lost what was no longer real. And that made space for what still is." He closed the notebook, turned off the porch light, and went inside. Not to start over, but to continue.